Everyone heard it, but no one moved. The sound didn't belong in a place like this, not in a family diner tucked between a gas station and a pharmacy off Route 9, where the air usually carried the soft clink of silverware and the low hum of tired conversations after a long workday. But now everything felt different, heavier, like the room itself was holding its breath, and Maya Carter stood frozen for just half a second, her fingers tightening around the edge of the serving tray as the sting on her cheek lingered, not sharp, not overwhelming, just enough to remind her that it had happened, that every pair of eyes in the room had seen it, and yet no one said a word, not the couple in the corner booth sharing fries, not the man at the counter stirring his coffee long after the sugar had dissolved, not even the manager near the register who suddenly found something very important to look at on the screen, and Maya felt that familiar pressure in her chest, the one she'd learned to swallow over the years, the one that whispered, "Keep your head down, keep your job, just get through the shift." But tonight it didn't settle the way it usually did. Tonight it lingered, pressing against her ribs as she lifted her chin just slightly, her breath steady even if her pulse wasn't. And across from her, Officer Ryan Cole adjusted his uniform like nothing had happened, like this was just another inconvenience in his day, his voice calm, almost bored as he said, "You're slower than I expected," and a few people shifted in their seats, uncomfortable now, but still silent, because silence was easier, safer, and Maya knew that kind of silence too well. She'd grown up around it, worked through it, learned how to survive inside it. But something about this moment felt different, like a line had been drawn somewhere deep inside her without her even realizing it. Because instead of apologizing again, instead of shrinking the way she had 100 times before, she heard her own voice come out, quiet but steady. "I'm doing my job." And the words seemed to hang in the air longer than they should have, like they carried more weight than a simple sentence deserved. And for the first time that night, a flicker of something crossed Cole's face, not anger, not yet, but surprise, like he hadn't expected resistance. Not here, not from her, and Maya could feel every heartbeat now, each one louder than the last. Not from fear exactly, but from something else, something rising, something that refused to stay buried. And somewhere behind her, a chair shifted, slow, deliberate, the kind of sound that didn't demand attention but somehow commanded it anyway. And Maya didn't turn, didn't need to, because she felt it before she saw it, the subtle change in the room, the way the air seemed to tighten, the way even the quietest voices disappeared completely, like instinct had taken over, like something had just entered the space that didn't belong to ordinary moments. And for the first time since it all started, Maya wasn't the only one standing in that silence anymore. The sound of that chair settling echoed softer than it should have, yet somehow it carried through the entire diner, threading between the frozen silence and pulling attention without force. And Maya felt it again, that shift, subtle but undeniable, like the moment before a storm when the air grows still and heavy, and she did not turn immediately, because part of her already knew, not who exactly, not yet, but what it meant. That she was no longer alone in this moment, and across from her. Officer Cole let out a small breath through his nose, glancing briefly toward the source of the sound before dismissing it, his posture unchanged, his confidence untouched, because men like him were used to rooms that bent around them, to people who looked away, to moments that ended exactly how they expected, and Maya saw that expectation in the way he stood, relaxed, certain, already moving past what had just happened as if it were insignificant, as if she were insignificant, but something inside her refused to settle back into place, refused to shrink, and her grip on the tray loosened just enough for her fingers to stop trembling, her shoulders straightening a fraction as she held her ground, not stepping forward, not stepping back, just standing, present, visible, and for a second it felt like the entire room was watching her, really watching her now. Not as a waitress, not as background, but as someone who had chosen not to disappear, and that realization settled into her chest with a quiet, steady weight, grounding her, while behind her footsteps followed, slow and measured, not rushed, not aggressive, just deliberate, each one landing with a quiet certainty that did not need to announce itself. And the closer those steps came, the more the tension in the room shifted, not louder, not sharper, just different. Like the energy itself was being redirected, and Maya finally turned her head slightly, just enough to catch the movement in her peripheral vision. A tall figure moving with calm control, shoulders squared but relaxed, eyes focused, not scanning the room but fixed on one point. And she knew that focus before she fully saw him, felt it in the way her breath caught for half a second before steadying again, not from fear, but from recognition, and it grounded her even more, because whatever this moment was about to become, it was no longer something she had to face alone, and Officer Cole noticed it too. Not the recognition, not the connection, but the shift, his attention flicking back toward Maya, as if recalculating, as if something no longer aligned with the outcome he had expected, and for the first time since this began, his expression tightened just slightly, not enough for most to notice, but enough for Maya to see, and that was when she realized something else. Something quiet but powerful. That control in this room was no longer sitting where it had been a minute ago. It was moving, shifting, and she could feel it happening in real time, like the balance itself was tilting, and no one spoke. Not yet, because whatever was about to be said carried more weight than noise ever could. The distance between them closed slowly, not with urgency, but with purpose, and Maya felt it before she fully saw it. The way the room seemed to lean toward that movement, as if every person present understood on some level that something had changed, and when he finally stepped into her line of sight, there was no dramatic entrance, no raised voice, no sudden gesture, just a man standing there with a quiet kind of presence that did not ask for attention but held it anyway, his eyes moving briefly to her, not scanning, not questioning, just checking, just seeing. And in that single glance Maya felt something settle inside her, something steady, something certain, like a hand placed at the center of her back telling her without words that she was not standing here alone anymore. And then his attention shifted, slow and deliberate, landing on Officer Cole with a focus that felt entirely different from anything else in the room. Not loud, not aggressive, but unyielding, like a line that could not be crossed once it had been drawn, and Cole noticed it immediately, his posture adjusting just slightly, his shoulders tightening in a way that betrayed the first hint of uncertainty, because this was no longer a situation he fully controlled, and for a moment no one spoke, not Maya, not the man beside her, not even Cole, because the silence itself had become something else entirely, something heavier, something that carried weight without needing sound. And Maya realized then how loud silence could be when it was filled with expectation, when it was waiting for something to happen, and she could feel her heartbeat again, slower now, steadier, no longer racing but grounding her in place, her fingers relaxing completely from the tray as she let it rest against her hip, no longer clinging to it like a shield, because she did not need one in this moment. And across from her Cole cleared his throat slightly, the sound small but noticeable in the quiet, his eyes flicking between Maya and the man beside her as if trying to reassess, to reestablish the control he had assumed was his from the beginning. And when he finally spoke, his voice carried less certainty than before, still firm, still attempting authority, but missing that effortless dominance it had held just minutes ago. "Is there a problem here?" he asked, directing the question outward but clearly aiming it at the man who had stepped forward, and the response did not come immediately, did not rush to fill the space, because it did not need to. And that pause, that deliberate moment of silence before an answer, shifted everything again, tightening the air, drawing every eye closer, and Maya felt it like a pulse through the room, that awareness, that realization spreading quietly from one person to another, that whatever was about to be said next would matter, not because of volume, not because of force, but because of who was about to say it. And the man beside her finally spoke, his voice low, even, controlled in a way that did not rise above the room, but somehow carried through it anyway, clear and steady as it cut through the silence. "Yeah," he said, not loud, not rushed, just certain, and in that single word, Maya felt the shift complete, like the balance that had been tilting was no longer uncertain, no longer moving. It had settled, firmly, decisively, and for the first time since this moment began, she was no longer the one being weighed by the room. The room itself had turned, and it was watching him. The word lingered in the air longer than it should have, not because it was loud, but because of how it was delivered, calm, steady, unshaken, and Maya felt it settle into the room like something solid, something real, and beside her the man did not move closer, did not invade space. He simply stood where he was, grounded, certain, his presence enough to shift the balance without a single aggressive motion. And Officer Cole let out a short breath, his jaw tightening slightly as he squared his shoulders, trying to reclaim the ground he felt slipping, his voice firmer now, more official. "I asked if there is a problem," he repeated, leaning into authority the way he had been trained to do. But something about it did not land the same anymore. Not with the way the room had changed, not with the way people were watching now, not avoiding, not pretending, but paying attention, and Maya could feel those eyes again. But this time they felt different, not weighing her down, not pressing her into silence, but witnessing, and she did not shrink under them. She stood there, steady, her breathing even, her posture no longer defensive, because something inside her had shifted along with the room, something that refused to go back to what it had been just minutes ago. And the man beside her tilted his head just slightly, not dismissive, not confrontational, just enough to show he had heard, his gaze never leaving Cole as he spoke again, voice still low, still controlled. "Yeah, there is," he said, and there was no rush in it, no need to raise volume or force attention, because he already had it, every person in that diner hanging on the space between his words. And Cole's eyes narrowed slightly, measuring, recalculating, trying to decide how to respond, how to position himself back on top of a situation that no longer felt as simple as it had before. And Maya noticed it, that hesitation, small but real, the first crack in something that had seemed so solid. And it was subtle, so subtle most would miss it, but she did not, because she had spent years reading rooms, reading people, understanding the smallest shifts in tone and posture just to navigate spaces like this. And now she saw it clearly. The moment control began to slip. And it did not come from force. It came from presence, from certainty, from something deeper than authority alone. And Cole straightened again, drawing in a breath as if preparing to push back, to reassert. "You interfering here," he started. His words clipped, defensive, but they did not finish cleanly, because the man did not interrupt, did not cut him off. He simply held his ground, steady and unyielding. And that alone disrupted the rhythm Cole expected, and Maya felt it again, that shift. Like gravity had quietly changed direction, and for a moment everything seemed to pause on that edge, waiting, watching, and then the man spoke once more, his tone unchanged, calm, precise, but carrying something beneath it that made even the silence feel heavier. "You already made it one," he said, and there was no accusation shouted, no threat implied. Just a statement, clear and direct, and somehow that made it land harder than anything louder could have, and Maya felt the weight of it settle into the room, felt the way it anchored the moment, and for the first time since this began, she was not bracing for what might come next. She was standing inside it, steady, present, as the balance continued to shift in a way no one could ignore anymore. The words settled into the space between them, quiet but immovable. And for a moment Officer Cole did not respond, not immediately, and that hesitation stretched just long enough for everyone in the diner to feel it, to notice the shift that had already begun to take hold. And Maya saw it clearly now, the way his confidence no longer filled the room the way it had before, the way his stance, though still firm, carried a fraction less certainty than it had just minutes ago, and it was not because anyone had raised their voice or stepped forward with force. It was because something deeper had entered the moment, something that did not need volume to command attention, and beside her the man remained still, his posture relaxed but grounded, his presence steady in a way that made everything else feel smaller by comparison, and Maya realized that what she was feeling was not just relief, it was recognition. Recognition of someone who did not need to prove anything, because everything about him already spoke for itself. And across from them Cole shifted his weight slightly, his gaze narrowing as he studied the man more carefully now, no longer dismissing him as just another bystander, but trying to understand what he was dealing with, trying to find footing again in a situation that no longer followed his expectations. And when he spoke, his voice carried an edge that had not been there before, not louder, but tighter, more controlled. "You think you can just walk in here and tell me how to do my job," he said. And the words hung there, sharper than before, but they did not land the way he intended, not with the way the room had changed, not with the way people were watching now, waiting, measuring, and Maya felt that attention shift again, no longer scattered, no longer uncertain, but focused, drawn toward the man beside her, as if instinctively recognizing where the center of this moment now stood. And the man did not react immediately, did not rise to the challenge or escalate the tone. He simply let the words sit, let them exist without giving them power, and that alone disrupted the rhythm Cole was trying to create, because there was nothing to push against, nothing to provoke, and Maya saw it again. That subtle fracture in control, widening just slightly. And then the man turned his head just enough to look at her fully for the first time since stepping forward. His eyes steady, calm, asking without words if she was all right. And Maya felt her breath catch for a brief second before settling again, grounding her, reminding her of something stronger than the moment itself, and she gave the smallest nod, barely noticeable to anyone else. But enough. And when his gaze returned to Cole, there was no change in his expression, no visible shift. But something about it felt firmer now, more defined, like a line that had been quietly drawn had just been reinforced. And when he spoke again, his voice carried that same calm certainty. But now it held something more, something unmistakable. "No," he said evenly. "I am telling you that you crossed one." And the simplicity of the statement cut through everything else, stripping away the noise, the authority, the posture, leaving only the truth of the moment standing in the center of the room. And Maya felt it settle into her, into the space around her, into the silence that followed. And for the first time since this began, the weight that had pressed against her chest lifted, replaced by something steady, something unshakable. As the balance in the room no longer felt like it was shifting, it had already changed, completely. The silence that followed did not feel empty anymore. It felt full, like it was holding something in place. And Maya could feel it in her chest, steady and grounded. No longer tight with tension, but firm with something she had not allowed herself to feel in a long time. Certainty. And across from them Officer Cole's expression shifted again, not dramatically, not enough for someone who was not paying attention, but Maya saw it. The way his eyes flickered, the way his stance adjusted just slightly as if recalculating once more, because this was no longer a situation he could control by simply raising his voice or leaning on authority. And that realization lingered in the air between them, unspoken but understood. And for a moment he said nothing, his gaze moving from the man to Maya and back again, as if trying to piece together something that did not quite fit his expectations. And Maya held that gaze when it landed on her, not defiant, not aggressive, just steady, present, refusing to disappear. And that alone changed something, something subtle but undeniable, because she was no longer reacting to him. She was existing in the moment without shrinking, and that shifted the balance just as much as anything else had. And beside her the man remained exactly where he was, not stepping forward, not crowding the space, simply holding his ground with a calm that did not waver. And that calm carried weight, more than volume ever could, more than force. It was the kind of control that did not need to prove itself, and Cole felt it, even if he did not fully understand it. And when he finally spoke again, his voice was different, still firm, still holding on to authority, but lacking that earlier edge of certainty. "You are making this bigger than it needs to be," he said, and the words felt like an attempt to pull the moment back into something smaller, something manageable, something he could still define. But the moment did not shrink, it did not fold back into place, because it had already grown beyond that. And the man beside Maya tilted his head slightly, not dismissive, not confrontational, just acknowledging the statement without accepting it. And when he responded, his tone remained even, measured, but there was something final in it now, something that left no room for negotiation. "No," he said quietly. "It already is what it is." And that was it. No elaboration, no raised voice, just a simple truth placed firmly into the center of the room. And Maya felt it resonate, felt it settle into every corner of the diner, because everyone there understood it, whether they said anything or not. And for the first time since this began, the weight of the moment was no longer on her shoulders. It had shifted entirely, resting now in the space between truth and consequence. And she stood there, no longer bracing, no longer shrinking, just present, as the room waited to see what would happen next. The room did not return to normal after that. It could not, because something had already shifted too far to be undone, and Maya felt it in the way no one picked up their fork again. In the way even the soft hum of the refrigerator behind the counter suddenly seemed louder than any conversation that used to fill the space, and she stood there with a stillness that no longer came from holding herself back, but from choosing to remain exactly where she was, grounded in a moment that had finally stopped moving around her. And across from her, Officer Cole exhaled slowly, his gaze dropping for just a fraction of a second before lifting again. But this time there was calculation in it, not confidence, not dominance, but assessment, the kind that comes when someone realizes they are no longer dictating how things unfold. And he adjusted his stance again, smaller this time, almost imperceptible, but enough. Enough for Maya to notice, enough for the shift to continue settling deeper into the room. And beside her the man did not move, did not need to, his presence already occupying the space in a way that made movement unnecessary. And that stillness carried more authority than any raised voice could have. And Maya realized then that what made it powerful was not force, it was control, the kind that came from knowing exactly where you stood and not needing to prove it to anyone. And Cole cleared his throat again, the sound sharper now in the quiet, his voice returning but different, measured in a way that suggested he was choosing his words more carefully. "This does not need to go any further," he said, and it sounded less like a command and more like an attempt, an effort to redirect something that had already moved beyond his reach. And Maya felt the words pass through the space without landing, because they did not change anything. They could not anymore. And the man beside her finally shifted his weight slightly, just enough to show that he was engaged, present, but still entirely in control of himself, his eyes steady on Cole as he responded, his voice calm, even, but carrying a clarity that cut through the tension without needing to raise volume. "It should not have started," he said, and that was it. No accusation layered on top, no escalation, just a simple truth placed exactly where it belonged. And Maya felt something settle deeper inside her at those words, something that had been waiting, something that had needed to be said out loud, even if it was not by her. And across from them Cole's jaw tightened again, but this time there was no quick response, no immediate pushback, just a pause, longer than any before, and that pause spoke louder than anything else in the room, because it confirmed what everyone was beginning to understand, that the balance had already changed, and it was not shifting back. And Maya stood there in that realization, no longer shrinking into the edges of the moment, no longer bracing for what might come next, but standing inside it, steady and visible, as the silence around her held everything in place, waiting for the next move that would define how this would end. The silence did not break, it deepened, settling into something that felt almost tangible, like the air itself had thickened around them, and Maya could feel it against her skin, steady and unmoving, as if the entire room had agreed without speaking that this moment mattered. And across from her, Officer Cole shifted again, not as sharply this time, not with the same certainty he had carried earlier, but slower, more deliberate, like someone choosing each movement carefully instead of reacting instinctively. And his eyes moved once more between Maya and the man beside her, lingering longer now, searching for something, a sign, a weakness, a reason to regain control. But there was nothing there to take, nothing that invited challenge, and that absence of vulnerability unsettled him more than any confrontation could have, and Maya saw it. The way his posture no longer filled the space the same way, the way his presence had begun to shrink without him realizing it, and beside her the man remained exactly as he had been, calm, grounded, unshaken, and that stillness had become the center of everything, pulling the room into its orbit without effort. And Maya felt herself aligning with it, her breathing steady, her shoulders relaxed, no longer carrying the invisible weight she had held for so long. And it was not just because someone had stepped in, it was because something inside her had shifted too, something that would not allow her to disappear again. And that realization settled deep, quiet but permanent. And Cole finally spoke again, his voice lower now, less sharp, more controlled. "This is not worth making a scene," he said, and the words felt like an attempt to minimize what had already happened, to reduce it to something smaller, something forgettable. But the room did not accept that. The silence did not bend, and Maya felt it clearly. The difference between what was being said and what was understood, and the man beside her tilted his head just slightly, acknowledging the statement without agreeing to it. His gaze steady, unwavering, and when he responded, his voice carried the same calm certainty. But now there was something unmistakable beneath it, something that made even the quiet feel heavier. "It already is," he said, and the simplicity of the words left no room for interpretation, no space to retreat into denial, and Maya felt the truth of it settle across the room, felt the way it anchored everything in place. And for a moment no one moved, no one spoke, because there was nothing left to obscure what had happened, nothing left to hide behind, and Cole's jaw tightened again. But this time there was no immediate response, just a pause, longer than before, heavier than before, and Maya could see it clearly now, the moment where certainty gave way to awareness, where control slipped fully out of his hands, and in that space, in that quiet, everything had already changed, not through force, not through escalation, but through something far more powerful, the simple refusal to accept what should never have happened in the first place. And Maya stood there in that realization, no longer waiting, no longer bracing, just present, as the weight of the moment settled fully into its final shape. The moment stretched, not breaking, not easing, but holding steady like something that refused to be undone, and Maya felt it settle deeper into her bones, that quiet certainty that this was no longer something fleeting, no longer something that would simply pass and be forgotten. And across from her, Officer Cole exhaled again, slower this time, his gaze dropping briefly before returning. But now there was something else there, something heavier, not anger, not authority, but awareness, and Maya saw it clearly, the realization that whatever this had been, it had gone too far to be dismissed, too far to be brushed aside with a simple word or gesture. And for a moment he said nothing, and that silence spoke louder than anything he could have said, because it carried hesitation, and hesitation had not been part of him before this. And beside her the man remained still, his presence unchanged, grounded in a way that made everything else feel unstable by comparison. And Maya realized then that what made it powerful was not just who he was, but how he carried himself. The way he did not need to move, did not need to push, did not need to raise his voice to shift the entire room. And that realization settled into her like something permanent, something she would not forget. And Cole finally lifted his chin slightly, his posture adjusting once more, but this time it felt different, less like reclaiming control and more like deciding how to proceed without it. And when he spoke, his voice was quieter, measured in a way that suggested he was choosing his words carefully now. "You are taking this out of context," he said, and the statement hung there, an attempt to reshape the moment, to redefine it into something smaller, something less consequential. But the room did not accept that version. The silence did not shift to accommodate it, and Maya felt it clearly, the disconnect between what was being said and what everyone had already witnessed. And the man beside her did not respond immediately, did not rush to counter or argue. He simply let the words exist for a moment, and that pause carried weight, forcing the truth to remain where it was instead of being buried under explanation. And when he finally spoke, his voice was steady, calm, but now there was something unmistakable in it, something that left no room for reinterpretation. "No," he said evenly. "It is exactly what it is." And the simplicity of the response cut through everything else, leaving no space for distortion, no room for denial. And Maya felt it settle into the room like something final, something that could not be undone by words alone. And across from them Cole's expression tightened again, but there was no immediate pushback, no quick retort, just another pause. Longer this time, heavier, and Maya saw it clearly now, the moment where control had fully slipped away, where the outcome was no longer his to shape. And in that quiet, in that stillness, the truth of the moment stood alone, undeniable, and Maya remained where she was, steady and present, no longer carrying the weight of what had happened, because it no longer belonged to her alone. It had shifted into the open, into the room, into something that could not be ignored. And as the silence held, it became clear to everyone watching that whatever came next would not be about control, it would be about consequence. The silence no longer felt uncertain, it felt decided, like something had already been settled without needing to be spoken out loud. and Maya could feel it in the way her chest rose and fell evenly now, no longer tight, no longer bracing, just steady, grounded in a moment that had finally stopped shifting beneath her feet, and across from her Officer Cole stood still, but it was a different kind of stillness than before, not controlled, not dominant, but measured, as if he were carefully choosing what came next because he understood now that every word mattered, every movement carried weight, and Maya watched him, not with fear, not with hesitation, but with clarity, seeing him not as an untouchable presence, but as a man standing in a moment he could no longer control, and that realization changed everything. And beside her the man remained exactly as he had been, calm, composed. His presence unwavering in a way that did not demand attention but held it completely, and for the first time Maya allowed herself to fully acknowledge it. Not just that he was there, but who he was to her, the quiet strength she had always known, the steady presence she had leaned on in moments she had never spoken about, and it grounded her even deeper, anchoring her in a way that made the room feel smaller, simpler, clearer, and Cole finally spoke again, his voice lower now, stripped of the edge it once carried. "We can handle this another way," he said, and the words felt different, not a command, not an attempt to control, but something closer to an offer, or maybe a retreat. And Maya heard it clearly, the shift in tone, the absence of certainty, and it did not bring satisfaction, not the kind people might expect. It brought something quieter, something more final, the understanding that the moment had already passed the point where it could be undone, and the man beside her did not move immediately, did not respond right away. He simply let the words settle, let them exist in the space where everything had already changed, and when he finally spoke, his voice carried the same calm certainty as before, but now there was something resolute in it, something that marked the end of uncertainty. "No," he said evenly, "we are going to handle it the right way." And the words landed with a quiet finality that left no room for negotiation, no space to redefine what had happened, and Maya felt it settle into the room, into the silence, into herself, and for the first time since it all began, she did not feel like she was standing inside someone else's moment. She felt like she was standing inside her own, and across from them Cole exhaled slowly, his shoulders lowering just slightly, and that small movement said more than any argument could have, because it marked the point where resistance gave way to acceptance, not of defeat, but of reality, and Maya saw it. The shift fully complete now, the balance no longer moving, no longer uncertain. It had settled, firmly, decisively, and in that stillness, in that quiet, everything that followed would no longer be about who controlled the moment, it would be about what came after it. And Maya stood there, steady and unshaken, knowing that whatever came next, she would not disappear from it again. The words did not echo, they settled, firm and unmovable, and Maya felt something inside her align with them, like a final piece falling into place, not loud, not dramatic, just certain, and for the first time since the moment began, she allowed herself to fully breathe, a slow, steady inhale that did not catch halfway, that did not tighten her chest, and the release of it felt different, lighter, as if something she had carried for years had quietly loosened its grip. And beside her the man remained exactly as he had been, calm, grounded, his presence no longer just a shift in the room but a steady anchor within it. And Maya turned her head just slightly, enough to look at him fully now. And there it was, not in words, not in gestures, but in the quiet understanding between them, the kind that did not need explanation, and it grounded her even deeper, reminding her that this moment was not just about what had happened, it was about what she would no longer accept. And across from them Officer Cole stood still, his shoulders no longer squared in the same rigid way, his posture no longer projecting control but holding itself together. And when he spoke again, his voice carried something new, something that had not been there before, not authority, not confidence, but restraint. "We can resolve this without escalating," he said, and the words felt measured, chosen carefully, as if each one had been weighed before being spoken, and Maya heard it clearly, the shift from command to negotiation, from control to caution, and the man beside her did not respond. Immediately, he let the words sit, let them exist in the space that had already been defined by truth, and when he spoke, His voice was just as steady as before, but now there was something final in it, something that marked the moment as complete. "That is not your call anymore," he said, and the sentence landed with a quiet precision that left no room for argument. And Maya felt it settle into the room like a line drawn clearly across everything that had happened. And for a moment no one moved, no one spoke, because the shift was undeniable now, complete. And in that stillness Maya realized something else, something deeper than the moment itself, that her voice, her presence, her refusal to disappear had mattered just as much as anything else, that this had not only been about someone stepping in, it had been about her choosing not to step back. And that realization settled into her like something permanent, something she would carry long after this moment ended. And across from them Cole exhaled slowly, his gaze dropping once more before lifting again. But this time there was no attempt to reclaim what had already been lost, no effort to reshape the situation into something else. Just acknowledgement, quiet and reluctant, but real. And Maya saw it, felt it, the moment where resistance finally gave way. And in that space, in that quiet, everything that followed would no longer be about proving anything. It would be about what came next. And Maya stood there, steady, present, no longer defined by the moment that had begun this, but by the way she had remained in it, unshaken, visible, and no longer willing to disappear. The room did not erupt after that. It did not dissolve into noise or chaos. It held its shape, quiet and aware, like everyone understood that what had just happened carried weight beyond a single moment. And Maya stood there feeling it, not pressing against her anymore, not suffocating, but settled, like something that had found its place. And for the first time since the beginning of her shift, she was not counting minutes, not thinking about what came next just to get through it. She was present, fully, in a way she had not allowed herself to be before. And beside her the man shifted slightly, not stepping away, not breaking the space, just easing his stance in a way that showed the moment had changed, that the tension no longer required the same level of readiness. And Maya noticed that too. The subtle difference, the quiet release of something that had been held tight. And across from them Officer Cole reached up briefly, adjusting his collar in a motion that felt more habitual than purposeful, his gaze no longer fixed in challenge, but lowered, thoughtful. And when he finally spoke, his voice carried something entirely different now. Not authority, not defensiveness, but something closer to acknowledgement. "This will be documented," he said, and the words were careful, measured, chosen not to escalate but not to dismiss either. And Maya heard it clearly, not as a threat, not as a warning, but as a shift into something procedural, something that existed outside of the moment itself. And it did not unsettle her, because the moment had already been claimed, already been seen, and nothing about it could be undone by how it was recorded later. And the man beside her gave a small nod, not approving, not dismissing, just acknowledging the statement as something expected, something that would follow naturally from what had already happened. And there was no need to say more, because everything that mattered had already been said. And Maya felt that realization settle into her, quiet and firm, that this was not about winning or losing, not about proving something to the room. It was about standing in truth and not stepping away from it. And that was something she had done, not perfectly, not loudly, but undeniably. And around them the room began to breathe again, subtle at first. A fork lifted, a chair shifted, the soft murmur of voices returning in cautious fragments, not ignoring what had happened, but moving forward with the awareness that it had. And Maya felt it, the world resuming, but not resetting, not erasing. And she remained where she was for a moment longer, letting it all settle, letting herself feel the difference between before and now. And it was not dramatic, not overwhelming, but it was real. And as she finally shifted her weight, adjusting the tray in her hand with steady fingers, she realized something simple and powerful at the same time, that she had not just endured the moment, she had remained in it, and that had changed everything. The last trace of tension did not vanish all at once. It eased, slowly, like something releasing its hold one breath at a time. And Maya stood there feeling the shift settle completely into the room, not heavy anymore, not pressing, just present in a way that could not be undone. And for the first time since everything began, she allowed her shoulders to drop fully, the tray resting steady against her hip as her fingers relaxed. Without effort, and she looked around. not as someone searching for approval, not as someone bracing for judgment, but as someone simply aware, and the room looked different now, not because anything physical had changed, but because she had, and that difference was enough to alter everything she saw. And beside her the man took a small step back, not leaving, not withdrawing, just giving the moment space to breathe, his presence still there, steady as ever, but no longer needing to anchor the room in the same way. And Maya felt that too, the quiet shift from standing together in tension to standing side by side in something calmer, something resolved. And across from them Officer Cole gave a brief nod, not forced, not exaggerated, just a small acknowledgement that carried more meaning than any words he had spoken before. And without another attempt to reshape the moment, he turned slightly, stepping back into his role, but not the same way he had stood in it before. And Maya watched him for a second, not with anger, not with fear, but with clarity, seeing him as he was now, not as he had seemed at the start. And that clarity felt like something she would carry forward, something that would not fade when this moment did. And around her the diner returned to life more fully now. Conversations picking up in low voices, the soft clink of silverware returning, the quiet rhythm of an ordinary evening resuming. But it was not the same ordinary, not really, because something had been seen. Something had been acknowledged, and that changed the space in a way that lingered even as people moved on. And Maya took a small breath, steady and even, and shifted her weight, ready to continue her shift, not because she had to endure it, but because she chose to remain in it, fully, without shrinking. And as she turned slightly, her gaze met his again, just for a moment, and there it was, that same quiet understanding. No words needed, no explanation required, just a shared recognition of what had passed and what it meant. And Maya felt a small, almost imperceptible smile settle at the corner of her lips, not wide, not showy, just enough to mark the change. And as she moved forward, stepping back into the rhythm of the diner, there was one thought that stayed with her, clear and steady, not loud, not dramatic, but undeniable, that tonight had not changed who she was, it had revealed it, and she would never step back from that again.